Good morning, everybody. I hope you're doing well. So, our lesson for today has these objectives. We're going to take a look at equations that have mixed number coefficients. So, what that means is instead of seeing something like 3x or 2a or 5b or whatever it is, we're going to see things instead that look like this: 1/3 x, or maybe 3 1/3 x. And so we're going to have to change that into something else that we can work with a little bit better. And then we're also going to take a look at some that have negative coefficients. So -3 1/3 x, or -5h, or whatever it is. The process that we do is exactly the same as everything else we've done before. Okay, so what I would like you to do right now, if you don't have a piece of paper, pause the video and make sure you get a piece of paper. And I'm going to walk you through maybe one or two of these, and then the rest I'd like you to just kind of do on your own as you see fit. Okay, so copy this down, and if you need to pause the video before I go on, do that, but copy this down so that we're working through this exactly the same way. So in this case, we've got 1 1/8 x. That's equal to 36. So let's say x ends up being 100. That means we've got one full group of 100, and we've got another eighth of 100. And all together, if that is actually 100, somehow that's going to make 36. Well, this isn't actually 100, it's something else. So let's find out what it is. We don't like having this mixed number here. And I've been telling you that a lot of times they were pushing to say turn that improper fraction back into a mixed number, but most of the time as you progress, it's going to be easier to actually deal with improper fractions, and this is really the first time we're seeing that happen. We don't like 1 1/8, and so we're going to change it into an improper fraction in this case, which is 9/8. And if you need a little bit more practice of making that switch, you can go back to IXL. I can give you some more practice if you need to, but just a quick review: 8 times 1 is like 8/8, plus that extra 1 is the 9/8. So instead of writing 1 1/8, we're going to write it as 9/8 x, and then everything else just stays the same. Okay, so now we're in the position where, again, we do the same process as we normally do. X is being multiplied by 9/8, and we want to get x by itself, so we want to do the opposite of multiplying by 9/8. Well, the opposite of multiplying by 9/8 is dividing by 9/8, and that sounds not so fun, right? I don't want to divide by a fraction, but you remember that secret that we did? Instead of dividing by a fraction, we're going to multiply by its reciprocal. So I could divide by 9/8, but instead I'm going to multiply by 8/9. The reason I do that is because 8 times 9 is 72, and 9 times 8 is 72. So this ends up just being 72 over 72, which is 1. In other words, 1x. It's like they canceled out. But if I multiply by 8/9 on one side, remember I need to multiply by 8/9 on the other side. Okay, so you might be looking at this now and going, okay, that makes sense. 72, 72, those cancel out. I'm left with just x. Over here, I've been doing math for a long time, and I still end up making this 36 over 1. It just helps me see that I'm multiplying a fraction by a fraction. Okay, and a fraction by a fraction, you could multiply top by top and bottom by bottom. I'm looking to cancel something out first. So I see that I can take this and divide both of them by 9. That'll make this 1. That'll make this 4. And it makes it a little easier because now I've got 4 times 8 is 32. And 1 times 1 is just 1. So 32 over 1 is simply 32. And now I look at this answer and say, is this reasonable? If I have one whole group of 32 plus another small part of 32, should that get me up to 36? Yep, looks pretty good. All right, let's try another one. Here we've got 3.5a times 490. And so we do the same thing. We're going to take a look at this mixed number and turn it into an improper fraction. 2 times 3 is 6, plus the 1 that I've already got is 7/2. So we're going to just change the entire look of that, and the equation is 7/2a equals 490. And now again, I'm going to try to get a by itself. It's being multiplied by 7 halves. So I'm going to get rid of it by multiplying by its reciprocal, 2/7. That'll cancel this all out on this side, and I'll be left with a. But I can't just do that on its own. I have to also multiply that same thing, that 2/7, on the other side. Over here, I'm going to want to think about this as if it's a fraction, 490 over 1. And again, that's a pretty large number, so I'm going to look for something to cancel out, and thankfully I can divide this by 7 and this by 7. That becomes 70, that becomes 1. That makes it a lot easier. 70 times 2 in the numerator is 140, and then I've got just 1 times 1 in the denominator. So altogether, that's 140 over 1, which is just 140. And again, I check this out. If I have 3 groups of 140 plus another half a group of 140, so another 70, will that give me 490? Yes, it will. Okay, so I'm going to show you a couple more, and I suggest that you just try these on your own without actually watching the video. So pause the video, do the problem on your own, and then watch for me to help out. If you feel like you need the extra help, then yeah, you can walk through it with me. I'm going to start going a little bit faster though. Okay, so in this one, you've got the mixed numbers on both sides of the equation. That doesn't change anything. Now you just have more to more to change. So over here, I'm going to call this 4 times 2 is 8, plus 3 more is 11, so 11/4 times your W. And then over here, this mixed number, 5 times 6 is 30, plus 3 more is 33/5. And I want to get that W by itself. So instead of dividing by 11/4, I'm going to multiply by 4/11. And I have to do that on both sides. So this becomes 4/11 as well. These cancel. I don't even have to think about it. I know they're going to cancel. That's why I multiply by the reciprocal. So I'm going to be left with just W over here. And then this one, I've got some fairly large numbers, but thankfully I've got 33 and 11. Both of those can be divided by 11. And on the top I have 12, and on the bottom I have 5. So my answer ends up being 12/5. And again, if you wanted to change this back into an improper fraction, or into a mixed number and call that 2 2/5, I suppose you could. I don't really see a need for it right here, though. Let's try one more. We've got 2 2/3, so I'm going to change that into an improper fraction. That ends up being 8/3 times y. Over here, that's 9/5. Ugly 5. We're going to try to get y by itself. So instead of dividing by 8/3, let's multiply by 3/8. And if I do it on one side, I have to do it on the other side as well. These cancel, and I'm left with y. That's what I was trying to do. Over here, I'd like to see something that cancels out, but I don't really see anything. So I think we just have to multiply top times the top, which is 27, and the bottom times the bottom, which is 40. And that's as simplified as we're going to get. One last problem I wanted to show you, and it's a little bit different because of two things. One, that we've got negatives to deal with, and one, we've got decimals to deal with. If you really wanted to, if you just hate dealing with decimals, you could turn this into a fraction and call it 45/100ths, and then kind of do the same process we were doing now. Personally, I think it's actually easier to deal with decimals. So I like seeing things like this. Again, your process is the same. You want to get the variable by itself, and so you undo what's being done to it. Right now it's being multiplied by a -3, so I'm going to divide by a -3. Okay? -3 over -3 is 1, so these cancel, and I'm just left with x. On this side, I also have to divide by -3. Okay, and if you want to take this over to the side now and think about that as 0.45 divided into 3 groups, You can do that. I would keep this as a positive 3. You just know that your answer is going to be negative, right? Because you've got a positive divided by a negative. So your answer has to be negative. When you do this work, 0.45 divided by negative 3, you're going to end up getting 0.15. It should make sense because 45 divided by 3 groups is 15. And so you'll get some stuff like that. The negative really didn't affect anything except for the final answer. So you have to remember your rules that if you're multiplying a negative by a negative, it's positive. Or a positive by a negative, it's going to end up being negative, those sorts of things. I'm not going to walk you through this last problem, but I'll show you we will do the same thing, or the same type of thing. Y is the variable that you're trying to get by itself. So in this case, I would start by dividing both sides by negative 10. That'll get me y by itself. And then over on this side, I'm going to have a negative divided by a negative. My answer should be positive. I will leave you with that. Blessings on your day.